I'd like to welcome you to what I think is our 7th public hearing. The 7th of 9 public hearings over this period of 2.5 months, which we're holding in all parts of the borough. My name is Keith Hill, and I have the honour and privilege to be the chair of the commission. And in due course, I want to say to you a few words about the background to the commission, but first let me say something about today's hearing. As many of you will know, I was once a Member of Parliament, and as such served on several parliamentary select committees, including the famous and very powerful Public Accounts Committee. And for our hearings, I've adopted the model of the Parliamentary Select Committee. That means that the Commission will interview witnesses, they'll put questions to them, and have the opportunities to drill down with follow-up questions. And just as at a Select Committee, members of the public are very welcome to sit in and observe the proceedings. But the public does not take part in the proceedings, and that's how it is going to be at this hearing. And that doesn't mean that there won't be many opportunities for residents to communicate their views. In our newsletters and through our website, we've invited residents to make submissions, and we intend to publish them. And I've made it clear that we're always ready and happy to meet residents either individually or at public meetings. And many of these meetings have already been arranged. I've personally visited 20 estates up and down the borough, and we would be delighted if you wanted to stay on to the end of the hearing to chat and carry on the dialogue with you. Most importantly, we've appointed an organisation whose job will be to be in intensive contact with residents and to get their views and report them to the Commission. And that organisation is called TPAS, the Tenant Participation Advisory Service, and I'm going to ask their representative, the Independent Tenants and Leaseholders Advisor, Tom Hopkins, to say a few words shortly. But first, a little more on procedure and arrangements from Labab. Over to you, Labab.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome everybody to the 7th hearing. I'll just run through the agenda quickly, but before we do that, a couple of housekeeping matters. For those of us who are here would like to use the facilities, it's just through the doors on the right and straight ahead, and the bathrooms are on the left-hand side. We don't have any scheduled fire alarms today, but so if an alarm does go off, our meeting point is just outside the main community centre. It's outside the community centre. In a moment, we'll hear from Tom Hopkins, as the chair advised. We will then have a background of the hearing from Mr. Hill, and then an overview of the theme of today's hearing from Mr. Peter Bevington. Our first set of witnesses are Marilyn Mackey, who's a sheltered tenant in H&F, Tanisha Binns, who is also a tenant in H&F, and soon to be joining us is Jackie Pemberton, who's also a tenant from H&F. Our second set of witnesses is Janie Haig, who's Head of Client Management and Housing Performance, and Mr. Daniel Miller, Resident Involvement Manager in H&F. We'll have a short break, and after that is our final set of witnesses. Kate Dodsworth, Executive Director of People and Strategy in Amicus Horizon, Lee Page, Tenant Management Initiatives Manager in Southwark Council, and Tina Bernard, Chief Executive of Watford Community Housing Trust. Mr. Hill will give us a summary of today's meeting, and then we'll bring it to a close at around 7:30. And obviously all of our witnesses will be asked a series of questions by our commission members. And just to remind those speaking, I've been given a useful tip by our camera guy, and that is if you are holding the mic, please hold it to your chin and speak over it, and you will come across loud and clear. And without further ado, I'll hand you over to Tom Hopkins, who's our Tenant Participation Advisory.
Hello everyone. Just as introduced, my name is Tom Hopkins. I work for an organisation called Tenant Participation Advisory Service. We're here today in a role called Independent Tenants and Leaseholders Advisor. That means that we are appointed to work alongside the Resident Commission to make sure that information that's given to tenants and leaseholders and residents across Hammersmith and Fulham is fair, transparent, understandable and in plain language. And actually to make sure that in many respects the guidelines laid down by central government for these processes are adhered to and actually conformed with. So we're here till September. We also, as well as offering that service, offer opportunities to talk directly to tenants and leaseholders throughout the borough. We've been for a number of months now going out on a range of engagement activities that takes in community days, public events, meetings with TRAs, and we also offer a free phone confidential helpline for residents that have concerns or issues that they'd like to raise in confidence. So that's me. I'll be around at the end of the meeting if there's any individual queries or questions, and I'll hand back to Chair.
Thanks very much indeed, Tom. Let me then take the proceedings forward by saying a little bit about the background to the Commission and to the hearing. And I'll be brief about this. The establishment of the Commission arises out of a promise made in the Labour election manifesto in last year's local elections. So as a Commission, we have two tasks. One is to explore ways in which tenants and residents in general might be given more control over the future of their homes and estates. In other words, we're looking at the future governance of council housing in Hammersmith and Fulham. And our second task is to look at ways in which more investment might be secured for council housing in Hammersmith and Fulham to improve housing services and perhaps to build more social housing. Now, there's nothing unusual about the task we've been given. In housing jargon, it's known as a social housing stock options appraisal, and it looks at the condition of the housing stock, the future cost of repairs and modernisations, how to pay for them, and how residents can affect decisions taken about council housing. And these kind of stock option appraisals have been carried out scores of hundreds of times up and down the country. But there is one important difference here in Hammersmith and Fulham, and that is that while these stock options appraisals are normally carried out by council officers and other experts behind closed doors, nothing sinister about that, but that's how it happens. The unique aspect of what's happening here in Hammersmith and Fulham is that the appraisal is being carried out by a commission comprised of 9 residents and 4 independent outsiders, and the residents on the commission will have the final say in what is recommended. And the appraisal is being carried out in public because we wanted residents to be confident that our proceedings were as open, as transparent, and as honest as possible. So you, the audience, have an active role in the hearings, the important role of witnessing the work of the Commission. You're the public part of the equation. And I want to emphasise that there are no foregone conclusions. We're genuinely, completely open-minded. Yes, we'll consider what a stock transfer has to offer. Equally, we'll explore what is achievable under retention, that is to say, the council remaining as the landlord. And all the time, we will have 2 overriding objectives: giving residents greater control over their homes and providing excellent housing services and meeting housing needs, whilst at the same time recognising that the wishes of residents are paramount and that services need to be affordable. And I want to emphasise as well that it's not the job of the Commission to decide the future of council housing in Hammersmith and Fulham. It's the job of the Commission to make a recommendation to the Council about the way forward. And it will then be for the Council, the elected representatives, to decide what recommendation to adopt. Above all, any proposal affecting the future ownership of council homes, if it comes to that, will be decided by tenants in a ballot. The residents are in charge, and that's as it should be. So we continue our work as a Commission today with one straightforward and basic question, which is, how do residents get more involved in the running of their homes and in the estates? And I'm going to ask one of our independent experts on the Commission, Peter Bevington, to introduce these proceedings. Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Keith. It's working? It's working. I thought I'd introduce this subject, our theme for tonight, by pointing out that 40 years ago, in housing management, resident involvement was not something people had heard of. It only really entered the language of housing management in the 1970s. In those days, it was seen very much as an innovation, but since then, it's become a mainstream part of the way all social landlords manage their housing. And the forms of resident involvement range from quite simple customer feedback on the services that residents get, right through to the boards of the organisations that own the housing having residents serving as board members, so right at the top of the governance structure. And in between, there's a wide range of different ways in which residents can be involved in their housing. These include taking part in scrutinising landlord services as the regulator requires, getting involved in mystery shopping and inspections to help drive up standards of services, being involved in focus groups, reading groups, editorial groups to make sure that the landlord's communications are clear and intelligible, being part of a tenants and residents association at a state level, and being involved in the way the estate is run, right through to taking over management of the estate through an estate management board or tenant management organisation. And increasingly these days, there are opportunities for resident involvement provided through email, the internet, and social media, so that feedback can be provided on a personal way rather than through group involvement. Now, some housing organisations do a lot of this, others don't do very much. And equally, some residents do a lot of it, and others don't do very much. So the theme tonight is going to give us the opportunity to find out what resources have to go into resident involvement to make it effective, how organisations whose stock is dispersed over a wide and diverse geography, like Hammersmith and Fulham, can develop structures that work, how residents who are vulnerable and perhaps belong to hard-to-reach groups can be involved to the same level as everyone else. And as well as all of these traditional approaches, I should draw your attention to a report that's only recently come out, just last month, called Changing Places. It's a report by Family Mosaic, a London-based housing association, that questions whether the traditional approaches to resident involvement are really what we should be doing, and whether the focus should be more upon developing those email, social media and internet-based resident involvement methods that can be done on residents' own terms, and whether housing organisations should focus upon what they can do to empower residents at a community level so that they can do more to benefit their local communities around issues that are not purely just to do with housing. So it's a big agenda for tonight, and I'll close there and hand the microphone back to Keith.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. And we begin our proceedings as a resident-led commission. What more appropriately than with resident witnesses as we explore how can residents get involved and have more say. And I'm delighted to welcome to our proceedings this afternoon Marilyn Mackey and Tanisha Binns, and I'm going to start by asking them just to say a little bit about themselves and their own involvement. Marilyn, do you want to kick off the proceedings?
I will. Thank you for inviting me as a starter. I have been involved with this commission being developed in the early stages as far as the selection of the panel goes. What I'd like to say that it's the first time in the history that a commissioner system like this has been brought into a borough nationwide. So we're an experiment. When we were asked to look at 120 applications to select the commissioners that you have in front of you, It was a wonderful task, arduous but interesting. So that was the initial stage. The next stage was to elect the commissioners. Now, when you bear in mind that as from February the 8th of May, every resident in the borough received this letter giving a very detailed account of what the purpose of the commissioners was to be. And I've highlighted, just as a reminder, to give residents greater local control of their homes. The Commission is an independent and has promised to be objective, inclusive and transparent. To ensure your views are heard and the evidence that is submitted by writing to me meaning Keith Hill at hf-residence-commission.org.uk. Now bear in mind, not everybody's on the internet system as far as residents go, but you can still put pen to paper with any of your suggestions or your worries or your concerns. Because in the first booklet, which I thought was a wonderful booklet, first edition that came with that letter, specified very clearly all of the actual residents' commission public hearing days, and as Keith quite rightly said, you're on number 7, which is today. There's 2 more to go. What evidence has Keith received? What suggestions have Keith received? That will come out in all of the work that you have done, and it will be transparent on the evidence. That's the beginning stages. Now bear in mind that was only on the 8th of May. Then we're really into your other edition, which came out in June, which gives you a very good detailed account of what the commissioners have been doing, their evidence that they've been collecting, their findings, and now we're at the latter end of what's happening. Independent advice, that's TPAS.
Marion, I'm sorry to cut across you, and thanks very much indeed for this great advert for us and your support. And you've been tremendous in the process. But just a little, that's all about us. Just a little bit about yourself, and very briefly now.
Well, as an individual?
In terms of your involvement, yes. Not in the Commission, but your involvement in housing issues in the borough, but very briefly.
Right, literally in 2 minutes. So I'm actually a tenant rep for sheltered housing. I'm a tenant rep sitting on a TRA. I'm actually your housing forum, what's the new title today? Housing Representative Forum Chair. And I'm also the chair of sheltered housing. So my input has been extremely involving, to the point that I actually have wings and other sections called the consultative group, which is linked to Age UK, but it's an independent body.
That's pretty good, Marilyn. Right. I'm going to move on now. I'm going to ask Tanisha to say a few words about her involvement. Tanisha, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanisha Binns, and I am Vice Chair for the William Church TRA, and I also participate in the reading group that is held by the council. And I have been a TRA member for almost 2 years now. Prior to that, I had no involvement. And that's me in a nutshell.
Tanisha, hold on to the microphone there as we begin to explore the background of resident involvement in the borough. And I'd like to ask you what your impression is of the opportunities and support that's been available for resident involvement.
I think prior to me becoming TRA member, I was not aware of the ways that you could get involved. I always thought it was a inclusive club for certain people, and if you didn't hold a position, you could not apply to be involved. But since becoming a TRA member, I'm now aware that there is lots of ways that you can become involved, and you don't have to be on a committee or anything like that. All you want to be able to do is wants to make a difference in your community, in your borough. And I have to say Daniel has been really good since he has been involved in resident involvement. He has flooded me with wealth of information about what's available. As I said, prior to that, I had no interest because I always thought it was for that seclusive few.
How did you actually begin to get involved in your Tenants and Residents Association, TRA?
I used to attend my TRA meetings, and I sat there months after months, and I saw that nothing was getting done. And it was a waste of time, basically. It's just come, argue, go home, and the bigger issue was still there. So I think on the 1st of January, when you have to elect your new TRA members, I stood up and said, you know what, I'm not happy with the old members. I want to be a part of the TRA. We need to have a vote, and even if I have to vote myself in, I want to be involved because I need things to get done. Because that's what it's about. It's about listening to your tenants and getting things done.
Marion, I noticed when Tanisha was saying that it was difficult to get involved, that you kind of shook your head at that point, but there is a general impression that although folk like yourself have been tremendously involved in a tremendous job over the years, the actual levels of involvement have been rather low. If that's the case, why do you think there have been these low levels of involvement in the past, at least?
I think a lot of it was to do with the changeover from HAFTRA to what we are today. And basically there are still people who feel that they don't want to join the new TRA system of the Constitution and getting into the access of funding. And there is funding around, but you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. And there is that around. And how that's going to change is very much around the work that probably I think Michel is dealing with via Daniel with the residence section there. There is a lot of negativity, and I don't work with negativity. Personally, if you're not positive and want to move on and develop things within the borough, don't waste my time.
Well, that's fairly clear cut. Andy, over to you.
Hello, ladies. You've touched on some of my questions already, but I wondered if I could ask you both briefly, what tools and support do you think residents actually need to enable them to get involved?
Honestly, I know you use the internet is there, also email, but I'll use myself as an example. I normally don't always read it because it's always so long and you're trying to pick out, you don't know what information you're trying to look for. So I think having an information leaflet, so if you let your tenant, your resident know how they can become involved with a brief explanation of what's available for me, what's available, how they can get involved, and also an explanation of what these different groups are. Because you see, scrutiny group, if it's not explained to you, you're not going to know what a scrutiny group is unless it's explained to you or articulated really well. So I think having that information sent out to the residents, letting them know what's available, how they can become involved, letting them know that everybody can become involved, is not just for the inclusive few.
But if we were to talk to the residents' involvement team right now, they'd probably say that they are doing mail-outs and explanations to great depth. So do you think that these just aren't reaching the right people, or that they're not phrased correctly, or that there's not enough encouragement? What's missing?
Too much information.
Too much information.
too much information. You have information overload. If you want to explain to your residents that, okay, these are the groups that are available, just have that. Don't have anything else in that information. So you could do it as an information leaflet. You could have drop-in surgeries. You could have surgeries where half-day surgeries where you invite the residents, let them know what it's about, and different groups explain to them in a way that they understand, because everybody has different level of understanding. So you have to explain it to your resident in a way that let them know that, it's here, you can get involved. And also, if they do get involved, whatever they're involved with is taken seriously. It's not just another tick box.
Thank you very much. So, Tanisha's already hit on Daniel Miller, but Marilyn, I'd like to ask you, what's your view of the support that's available to residents at the moment?
In some cases, very good. I'm only sort of getting involved with the new TRAs that have been formed, because the ones that are already functioning know how to access what they need. The tools are there. But it's the new ones, it's getting new TRAs going, it's getting the ones that have sort of got the same old problem, repeat, action and deal with the problems. I mean, that's one of the things why there's a lot of negativity, but you can deal with it. There are ways around it. There are tools there to do it. It's called a phone. Talking, one-to-one, accessing, having sort of direct contact with individuals that you know. It's all very well having us as witnesses here. A lot of people know us, a lot of people don't know us, but there's a limit to our time, which is valuable, and that will go across the board as well.
May I just add, sorry, may I just add also having, I think Daniel does get tired of me sometimes because he's the main person, so I always send everything through to him because he's the person that I know. So I think having a person of contact is very, very important, because you don't want to be involved in something that's nameless. So having a point of contact, a point of reference for the residents to, if you have a problem with this, this is the person that you need to liaise with. It makes people want to get involved more, I think.
Thank you.
Johnny.
Hello. What levels of involvement do you think need to happen? Could you give us any suggestions?
When I can only go on the experience of getting sheltered housing recognised by TRAs. I only know of two. One is the Maystar, and the other one is actually a sheltered housing that's formed its own first TRA. Other than that, you've just got the main stock TRAs, and what needs to be looked at is to ascertain what the who the residents are that are living around the TRAs. It doesn't have to be just sheltered housing. Don't forget the people that live on their own and what's the name of the housings that have no TRAs? Street housing. Don't forget there's street housing people who do not get accessed. There's an abundance of people out there that want to do things but don't know how to access it. And I think that's going to be the role of Daniel's team, is not to forget. You need to stretch that wing out a little bit wider. There are so many activities and communities functioning in the borough, but the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Is there lack of that two-way communication?
Tanisha, do you want to add something on Johnny's question?
I think the first step will be to get the tenants involved, engage. And prior to this, as I said, and I always use myself as an example, I've lived in this borough for 15 years, and I've never been involved in anything until a year ago, and that's from joining the TRA. I didn't know it was available, and as I said, I've always thought it was for an inclusive few. It wasn't articulated very well. What was available wasn't disseminated effectively. So I was not aware. Not that I didn't want to get involved. I didn't know it was there. There was that element of communication was taken out. So I think the first step is to get the residents engaged, and also once you have them engaged, the benefits, you have to let them know we are human, we like benefits, the benefits of being involved.
But could I just ask, what was the level of why you didn't get involved? I mean, when you said you just thought it was an exclusive club, or was it because you only heard about it hearsay, or?
I didn't know it was there. As I said, until I joined the TRA, I didn't know that I could get involved, because no one told me I could be involved. I thought there was just for the, as I said, inclusive few. And those inclusive few, if you work in the council or if you were part of a TRA, you had to be a TRA member. But if that was articulated to us in a way that let me know as a tenant that, you know what, you can get involved, you can make a difference to your borough, to the council, and you can make a difference, I would have been more than happy to. But nobody told me that.
But how would you get people involved yourself if they're elderly or they come from different ethnic backgrounds, or how does it reach out to all those different diverse people within any number of estates?
I think the first step to that is to know, you have to know your residents, you have to know your tenants, you have to engage with them. And as I said, that's where the surgeries come in. If you know that you have a multicultural, you're living in a very diverse area, you have to have surgeries have it in different language. If it means having dropping surgeries with interpreter for people who don't speak English, do it that way.
So that doesn't happen in different languages, you're saying?
I don't know. Do you know?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
No.
Anthony, I think you've got a supplementary, and then Shirley.
Marilyn, you said in your introduction that you're chair of the Sheltered Housing Forum, which, as you know, I sit on as well. You're also involved with the Hammersmith and Fulham Older Persons Forum. As Peter mentioned at the beginning, we're constantly looking at new ways in which residents can be involved, such as through Twitter and Facebook. Given a lot of older people, not just in shelter but in general needs, do not have access to these new mediums, how do you think older people generally across the borough can find out more about how they can get involved and make a difference?
I'm going to put a little needle in the haystack here. It was said not so long ago that sheltered housing will be given a computer in the communal area for older people to learn how to use it, and then they would have access to whatever networks are happening. I'm going to give that to Daniel as a reminder that it still has not been done. So there's one aspect of it. It's all very well saying paper, 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 but you get paper thrown to you left, right and centre. But also bear in mind there's a lot of people that don't want to get involved because once they retire, they want to enjoy their retirement. They don't want to be running around their local community, getting involved. They've done their 30 or 40 years of work. It's time to rest.
Shirley?
A question for Tanisha and for Marilyn, so either of you can go first. I'm really interested in the issue of, I'm in a TRA committee as well. So since being involved, whether over a long time or more recently, have you got any success stories to tell us about how you've involved people locally in activities just perhaps focused around your estate? And likewise, any challenges that you faced?
When we formed our new TRA, what we did was, as a group, we had a day where we invited everybody that lived on the estate. So we call it Meet Thy Neighbor. Because you lived in an area or on an estate for a numerous amount of years and you don't know who live next door to you, which is not very good. It's good to get to know your neighbor. So we had that Meet Thy Neighbor, and it was really, the turnout was really good because we had food and everything, and we introduced, we went around introducing each person to the next individual, so they get to know, okay, I live at number 3, I live at number 2, so they know who each other were. So that was one way we got the residents involved. We also have started a youth club, and with the youth club you get to meet the parents, because on the first day the parents had to come with their children to the youth club, so that was another way of getting to meet other tenants.
And how do you resource the youth club? Do you run it yourselves?
Yes,
or?
we do it.
Okay.
Yes, we do. We do run it ourselves. We have a carer. I think she works in a nursery, and she's qualified, and she was happy to give up her time to help us run the youth club. And also we have other volunteers. So it's a matter of getting everybody involved. And I'm one of those persons. I'm very chatty. So if I see a tenant, I will, hello, how are you? I'm so and so. Come to our next TRA meeting. Bring any issues you have. So it's engaging them as well. It's letting them know that you're there, and if they have any issues, there's a platform where they can bring it to, and we try to resolve it together. And once you do that, you find they will engage with you a lot better.
I think I'm going to look at it from sheltered housing rather than as a broader stock element of it. With sheltered housing, there have been some changes where there used to be bingos and outings and coffee mornings and TV days and video this and all that. But those people are not with us anymore. And we've got a new generation of people coming into sheltered housing who don't have that same interest. They're more involved with the hobbies that they now know of the age that they're in at the moment. It could be going on holiday, it could be with their own television sets, whatever. So the change in the demographic element of older people, it's going to be slightly different because you're more independent, you can drive, you're a little bit more healthier. You enjoy wining and dining or going to the theatre. Now, you don't have anybody on site arranging that. You do that as an individual. But there are somehow also with the culture differences, the residents with culture differences have access to like the Hindu club locally and things like that. So we're having to approach it with what's happening today, not what happened 10 years ago. We have to move forward with the new changes, with what the culture's needs are today. So that's what's happening in sheltered housing. It's the diversity looking at what's available for that culture, the Caribbean, the West Indian, whatever. And it's changed. It's not like it was 5 or even 10 years ago. We're a bit more modern now, I think.
Let me put to you a final question, each of you. You talked about the way that you can get people more involved and some of the challenges in getting people more involved, but what if they said, well, what's the point? What do you ever achieve? What would your answer to that be, Tanisha?
Very good question. The first step to that would be they would have to know what's available first. Because it's hard to comment on something if you don't know what it's about. So having that information available to give to them, and then you can let them know. So say for scrutiny, I'll use scrutiny group. So scrutiny group, we've gone around and we've inspected 100 properties to ensure that it was up to standard. Tenants love that because it shows that you are taking an interest in their well-being, in ensuring that they live in properties that are up to standard. And I'm just going to be blunt, and not some wishy-washy looking properties, but you are taking an interest in their well-being. And when tenants know that you've got their best interests at heart, believe me, they will work with you, no question asked. But again, as human, what is the benefit for me? Once you can show them that benefit, once you can show them that data that you have, because you would have to have your data, you will get them on your side. It's all about engaging. And I said it before, nobody ever engaged me. It was Daniel. He was young and hip and, he had loads of information. He was always so happy, and I think, okay, that's fine, whatever, I'll come along. Because you're a great person, it makes a difference.
Well, thanks for that, Tanisha, and thanks for that wonderful trailer. It's difficult to believe that somebody as wonderful as Daniel, about whom we've heard so much, can actually exist, but I think we're about to see him. But one last word to you, Marilyn, on what's the point of it all?
There is a point to certain things that need to be challenged. I think the person you've just mentioned for the first time came to a sheltered housing forum, and I think learnt an awful lot about the forum, because we're dealing with a society that has seen so much, been through so much, dealt with so much, and we're still having to deal with those things today. Where do we go in the next 5 or 10 years? Keith, you're getting to that lovely silver lining period. My only wisdom to you would be don't lose your humour. And one thing I think that Hammersmith and Fulham are very good at is acknowledging that there are some people that really are not bothered. With the consultative group, with Age UK, there is an initiative on about loneliness, being on your own. We mustn't forget that there are an awful lot of residents who don't have relatives, who do not have access because of poor mobility. Don't forget them. They're there.
Well, Marilyn, thanks very much indeed. And you talk about getting to that stage of silver lining. Let me tell you, I'm way beyond it. Unlike you, of course, my dear. So look, what we want to say is to you, Marilyn and Tanisha, thanks for a fabulous session. Thanks for taking the trouble to come and talk to us. It's been a real educational and pleasurable experience, and we're very grateful to you. So thank you very much. Let's hear it for Tanisha and Marilyn. And now